many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective Podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Jo Sparrow, your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland. Back in season 1 on the 21st of April 2021, we spoke with Vivienne Timmermans, a much loved and well-respected voice in the Queensland adoption community. In 1980, Vivienne was an Australian champion figure roller skater from Inala, when at 17 she became pregnant and lost her daughter, who she named Sheree, to adoption. Vivienne went on to write about her experience in her memoir, You Named Me Sheree, and now facilitates a support group called You Gave Me a Voice. Today, we're privileged to hear another perspective of that story from Vivienne's daughter, who's now known as Tash Hope and who lives on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Tash, welcome to Adopt Perspective. I'm so grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tash, as you know, the very first thing that struck me when we spoke for the first time was how much you sound like Viv. And it was such a moving moment for me to hear your voice. Does that come up often for you?
It has, absolutely. I think not so much more now, but in the early days, 100% we got that a lot. As mentioned, I used to pick up her phone at home when I was visiting with her, and I used to go, "Oh, hello, Vivienne speaking." And so we, do little bits of tricks, which was pretty cool. We did get that a lot. But yeah, I think as we've aged, our voice has changed again. But yeah, still the same according to you. So I'll take that.
So Tash, I thought I'd love to begin by hearing a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up as an adopted person. So what are some of the memories and experiences that stand out for you?
Oh, look, my adoption growing up, I had a good growing up. I was very fortunate. I was very lucky in that space, and I understand, a lot of adoptive people aren't. However, my mum and dad who adopted me, I had a great upbringing, very lovable, treated me as let's use the word normal, as it was. Went on holidays, spoke respectfully, quite stable, went to a good school. So everything was really good in that space. Growing up as an adoptee, it had its challenges for me, right? So I didn't, it's kind of like, you know that they're your mum and dad, but you also know that you're not their mum and dad. So that was probably, the only sort of challenge I had in that space. But they were pretty good. My life was pretty good. Just trying to think more about, like with other family and friends and associated families. They were quite accepting of me, most of them. There was some times where I didn't feel the same as them. I'm guessing more talking about, when we get together in functions or family gatherings and stuff, it was always a little bit awkward for me personally. I guess because I was adopted and I just felt like, even though I was a part of the family, they always made me feel a part of the family. You just knew that you weren't.
Yeah, I get that.
Mm.
When did and how did you first learn that you were adopted?
I always knew. So my parents were always open and they always told me that I was adopted. They I don't know why they made that decision, and I'm grateful that they did in a way. So it was never something that they shied away from. They always said that how much they were glad that they have me and they love me. So that was always a constant messaging from them. Uh, they never they never introduced me to people and said, "Oh, this is my adoptive daughter. This, oh, this is our daughter, Natasha." Um, it was only sort of when we would go to doctors or when people would say, "Oh, you don't look like your mum or dad," and that's when, mum would open up and say, "Yeah, look, Natasha's actually adopted, but she's ours." They're very territorial in that space. Yeah.
Yeah. Was adoption something that you spoke much about while you were growing up, and it was something you felt you could bring up openly within your adoptive family?
We could have. Well, like it's something that it wasn't a taboo subject. It was something that we could have spoken about at any time, but we never did. So even when, there were some issues at school growing up, I never talked to them about it. Occasionally you might have, or every time a birthday would come around, it was, a little bit of oh, I'm sure, mum would say, another year's passed. I'm sure, this is, a special time for you as well. But it wasn't, yeah, there was just nothing there. Like there wasn't a reason to hide from it, I guess.
Yeah. Did you have any other siblings or any other adopted people around you growing up?
Didn't have siblings as such, but my dad was like a dad to a lot of people. We had a lot of cousins that were in our life, and two cousins in mind that grew up like sisters, but we were just very close cousins. They were from a sort of challenging family environment themselves. So dad always raised them together with us. So it was always the three of us together. Um, and we had another family member that it was dad raised in those later teen years for her as well. So we weren't sisters as such, but we were all related. Mum and dad always said that they never wanted to adopt a second child, that they wanted somebody else to feel the love that of having a child because they couldn't have children. So for them to adopt, again, they felt like they were taking that opportunity away from another waiting family, which, yeah, in my eyes is beautiful, I guess, in a holistic looking at it view. Why they didn't or how they thought, having one child, because there was that era of, oh, one child, you've got to have more than one child back in the 80s, even before it wasn't common to have one child in the home. So they just made that decision. Yeah. And I had a cousin that was adopted as well. We didn't really talk a lot about being adopted growing up, and she's 10 years older. We talk a lot now, and I think when I met Viv, there was that time when she had made contact with her birth mother or her mother, and she lost her mum not long after meeting her. So I felt with all the chaos, if we want to call it chaos, that was happening in my world, I just found it really hard to talk to her in that space because I knew of how much she was hurting in the journey that she was going through. So, but we talk more now because it's past tense. But growing up, we just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Or we didn't, yeah.
That's not surprising to me. I had three cousins and a niece and a nephew who are all adopted, and I kind of wanted to talk to them about it, but it just wasn't I don't know. So I got the sense that it wasn't right to talk to them about it. So we just never really did, until, like you said, until we were adults. So
Exactly. Yeah. And it was the same. It's like it was kind of like we had, when you walk past someone in the street, you just nod and you're saying hello. It was kind of like that relationship where you knew that we're on the same page, or we felt the same, or we had that connection, but it was an unspoken connection, until later in life. Yeah.
So what kind of story were you told about your adoption and your biological family?
Not much, to be honest. From what I remember, mum and dad didn't know a lot. So it was all we knew was mum and dad picked me up from a foster, like a foster home 6 weeks after I was born. All I know was that I've totally lost the question.
It was about what you were told about your.
Oh, told. Yeah. So they were told was that yes, the birth mother had, brown hair, blue eyes. And I think that's because that's a request that mum and dad put in I don't know how it works. And, I'm apologize for those out there who know how all this works on the back end. They just said, look, we'd like a child with, brown hair and blue eyes, because that's sort of like what my dad looked like. And that's all they knew. The only thing that mum had given to her was a little bracelet, which had one of those blue little birds on it, which was from Vivienne, but they didn't know her as Vivienne. It was just a part of the package, if you want to call me a package. It was just part of the adoption of me, which that bracelet, comes a beautiful story back in time. But that was it. So they didn't know where I was from, what my history was, or anything. So growing up, there was never anything told. Like, there was mum and dad didn't know. They just didn't know anything. They weren't given any information. It was like, oh, come and pick your daughter up at this time at this place, and off you go.
Yeah. So have you always felt curious about your biological family, or was there a particular moment or stage in your life that sparked an interest?
I was always curious because, as I mentioned before, I just felt like I didn't fit. Growing up, even though I had a beautiful family, mum and dad, but personally it was really tough, right? So growing up and not feeling like you didn't fit, or I would see, so what would mainly spark it was as I got older and being with friends or family, you saw them look like someone, right? So I would walk into their home and you see their family portraits, and that was something that I always noticed as a young person, that you look at my family portraits, we're just three strangers in a photo, connected by however we're connected. Visually, for some reason, was a thing for me. I don't know why, it just was, or knowing that I grew up knowing I was adopted. This wasn't my biological family. I didn't look like anyone. I didn't even possess any of the family traits, that they talked about, oh, this person looks like uncle this, or this person looks like auntie that. I never had that. I was just there, but I had to hear the stories. But I guess, yeah, the interest was always there. The interest was always there. And I think as I got older, I just assumed, because I was raised in New South Wales, even though I was adopted through Queensland, my family relocated to New South Wales. New South Wales law, I think at the time, was once you're 18, you could search for, for your information. So I always had in the back of my mind, when I turn 18, I'm going to have a look, not even knowing what vetoes were or anything like that. It was just, I had it in my mind, that's what I was going to do. So I always had that interest of doing, and as I progressed closer to 18, it was just in my mind, I've got to know where I come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely understand that.
It's a weird feeling. Like, I guess a lot of people just don't understand that disconnect of having to look like someone. You may not want to be with that person, but I guess just that answer, well, where did I come from? Like the curiosity, it's a really heavy thing that lay in people. And for me, it was really challenging for me.
It's the most natural thing in the world, I think, to want to know where you come from.
Yeah, 100%. And like even just to know, oh yeah, I was adopted out of Brisbane, but was I born in Brisbane? And they, pretty much, I can't remember if I knew that, or once I got the certificate, my original birth certificate, I think it had the hospital on there. So just even, or where did, what part of Queensland? Why Brisbane? It was just questions after questions.
Yeah. So you turned 18 and it's time to search. How did you approach that process?
I did it wrong. Looking back on it now, I did it so incorrectly. I was 18. I was very strong-headed. Tash does what Tash does kind of personality. And I, I applied because I was also like, I just wanted to know. I had some, health issues, and I just wanted to know more because it was really hard going to the doctors and they go, oh, because every time, oh, is there cancer in your family? Is there, blood disease in your family? Is there diabetes in your family? And you're saying, no, no. And I remember this one doctor said, what do you mean you don't know? And then, and then you have to say, because I'm adopted. So it just, you're constantly justifying yourself, I guess. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to apply for it. So I applied for it and I got this information back, and here was all this information of Vivienne. And as an 18-year-old, I didn't have guidance around what this all meant. Like, I just applied for it. There was no information, no pamphlet, nothing given to say, if you're going to go down this road, this is what you need to consider. Or no one rang me to say, well, why do you want this information? It just showed up in the mail. And everything showed up in the mail. So, information on her at the time of the adoption, her name, her full name, where she was living at the time. And so as an 18-year-old, I was just like, oh, this is so awesome. I'm just going to make contact, and not really realizing the bigger picture because you're just so focused on, there was this answer sitting right in front of me. And I think my mind just completely wrapped around that piece of paper that had this answer that I'd been searching for so long in my mind. So I hot-footed it down to the library. A lot of people probably don't even know what a library is today. And I jumped on the older electoral rolls
Yeah.
yep. So I sat there and looked up the last name, and there was only like 6 in Queensland. So I wrote all 6 down and just picked up the phone, and I picked up the first phone call, and I said, I'm looking for Vivienne, and they gave me her phone number, just like first phone call. And I sat on that for a little while, and then I rang her. Yeah.
Okay.
I know. So in all that moment, there was no consultation. There was no one guiding me, no one talking to me about it. Honestly, it was like I was high.
Yeah.
I was in Tash mode. I have this person's name. I've got my answer. I now know I've got her phone number in my hand. I'm just going to ring her.
Okay.
See, yeah, it's so wrong. It was just looking back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what an idiot. But
I completely can relate though, because I was 19 when I found my mother, and
yeah.
Luckily I had a bit of a discussion with someone at Jigsaw before I made contact, and even though I probably didn't take a lot of that advice, some things did stick with me, and I ended up using a mediator and stuff, which probably was helpful. But I completely get it. You got this information, you're like, bang, let's go.
100%. And like there was no jigsaw. There was nothing in the world of adoption support in my world.
Yeah.
Not one bit. Like even, I mean, internet wasn't there back in those days either, and you couldn't just rock up to the library or open the encyclopedia and go, oh, what to do to find your biological parent if you're adopted. Like there was just nothing. So I just did what Tash wanted to do, and that was just to call her, not really thinking things through.
Well, let's hear what Tash did. You called. What happened next?
It was so bad. No, it was good. So it was bad. Like the big picture, it's really bad, but it was so good for me at the time. So when I very first rang, Viv's husband answered the phone. The Viv wasn't there at the time. And I did the biggest lie and said, oh, look, my name's Natasha and I am just looking for Vivienne. And he's like, oh, he didn't even ask where I was from or anything. He just said, oh, no, she's not here, blah, blah, call back in a little while. And I said, yeah, no worries. And I got off the phone and I didn't say, anything about anything. And I was kind of like, you still got that high moment, like, oh my God, it's so good. And he said, oh, to call back whatever time it was. I honestly don't remember. And so I waited. I just waited. And I kid you not, it was right on that time I called again. And I remember sitting in my bedroom doing this. And I remember looking out the door because I was still living at home with mum and dad. It was back then when you picked up the handset, and if someone was listening on the other line, you knew that they were listening on the other line. So I'd stick my head out, make sure no one was listening on the other end. And she answered, and she's like, Vivienne speaking. And I just went, hello. Look, this might sound really strange, but my name's Natasha, and I think you're my birth mother. And that was it. And there was just silence on the phone, just silence. So looking back on it, I had no consideration or no education around what that would have meant for her or that family. I was just so self-absorbed in me and what that meant for me, connecting with her. And that wanting to connect, like that connection was so strong, I couldn't pull away from that. And then it just went from there. So there was just this silence, and she just said, can you just hold on 1 second? Yeah. And I heard the little click of the phone. She put the phone down. Hearts are pounding, all those emotions and that nervous energy. And 2 minutes later, she picked up the phone again. And so what had happened, she ran from upstairs to downstairs. And she said to me, look, I've got to ask you something. She said, because I've had incidents in the past. She said, what did I call you? And I said, you named me Sheree.
Yeah.
So that's where Viv's book and blog came into it. And so that was a bit of validation for her to sort of, breathe this all out. And then it just snowballed from there.
How did it snowball? How did it roll out from there, Tash?
Oh, look, it was really hard. It was exciting for us, but everything around us was really hard. So even though Vivienne actually had a veto on my file, and it was 6 weeks before I was turning 18, for some reason and some connection that she had spiritually, she went in on her own and took that veto off. And then, 6 weeks later, she gets this phone call. So for us, it was really exciting. We had to hide it from her family for a while, which was hard, because she had never disclosed this to her husband and her family. So as much as she was willing to talk to me and she was really excited, and, you know, we would talk for hours on the phone. Like, we would call, I think it was like $2 for as long as you want after a certain time, or whatever those STD calls, you know, back then. It was really exciting, but the domino effect that it had on her family was huge, and I never considered that. The domino effect on my family wasn't too bad. Like, my mom was really supportive, and so was my dad. I never really checked in to see how they felt about it all. I think in their mind, it was like, Tasha's 18, she's just going to do whatever she's going to do, right? We can't stop this. We just have to be there for her. The only thing I can remember from Dad's perspective was meeting my biological father. I know he was very worried if that was the case down the track. But other than that, for me to connect with Viv, it was very exciting for them as well. They were very supportive. They couldn't wait to meet her themselves because they had given them a gift in their eyes. So that was really nice. I think the challenges was more Vivienne's side.
Yeah. So you many years into that relationship now. So how has it progressed forward from that time all those years ago?
Oh, look, it's been really hard. Vivi and we've had our challenges together. And it was something that I reflected on when I heard Vivienne's podcast herself, actually. I never, you know, there was a moment in that podcast I never even thought about. But that was about meeting me and at the age that I am, and you know, trying to fit with each other. You know, all of a sudden you just meet a person that's so random and characters, and you're supposed to just click. You just don't. You know, I think maybe because Vivi and I are so similar in character, maybe we were both very strong-headed, but at the same time I stepped back because when I really realized what the damaging effect was having on her family, I moved back. When I met my grandparents, um, that in itself was really hard as well, because when I walked through their door, in their minds, they had buried me as a dead child. And then for me to walk through the door,
Yeah,
it was like I'd risen.
that's a lot. That's powerful words.
Yeah. And I guess, like, for me, watching what I was doing to that family, and, you know, it basically forced Viv into telling them. Maybe part of her wanted, you know, it was a good way for, I don't know, I can't speak for Viv, but for me, watching it was really hard. And then balancing the relationship I wanted to have with Viv, also identifying the challenges that she was facing, but also the challenges that I was facing with my mum and dad at the time, you know, and then having a daughter young myself. So I had all these balls in the air. And I just couldn't do it all. So, you know, we lost connection there for a little while. I guess, you know, everyone goes through their own thing. I just had to let go of a few things. And for me at that time was, you know, I just had to back off. I had to let everyone settle down. I had to have them let their own. And because I blamed myself, it was like, oh my God, Tash, if you did this differently, would it have resulted in that same outcome? So I kind of blame myself for that. But that didn't kick in for many years later.
Yeah. I mean, it's often on reflection, isn't it, that we can see these things more clearly. And that disclosure, I mean, that often comes at reunion. It's amazing because of the shame and guilt around adoption. A lot of the time, mothers have not disclosed it to anybody. They've like carried this with themselves, and only themselves their whole lives. And it was in my own case, it was too. That disclosure happened after I made contact with her son and her partner at the time as well.
Yeah, and I just wasn't prepared for that, or I just wasn't educated for that. Like at no point did I ever think connecting with Viv would almost end in divorce for her and her family. Like it never crossed my mind because I was just so uneducated in this space. And if you were to go back to that time, it's a great reflection of how powerful all this messaging is now that we have today, and all the support groups to be able to support these moments. Because yeah, it's and then that's just another burden I feel I've carried, because now I've destroyed this family. My mum didn't want me, she gave me up for adoption, and then now that I've met her, I'm going to destroy her life again. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. It's a funny feeling.
You hit the nail on the head, I think. Someone asked me recently, like, what I get out of the work that I do with Jigsaw, and it's to provide information that wasn't available to me when I was 19 years old and trying to figure it out. And that's the important thing about what you're doing now too, is sharing your story. And it's like we leave some little breadcrumbs for people about, through all of our vast experiences about how things might go, with the commonalities and the differences that can help people go, okay, I might approach this differently.
100%.
So, have you had the opportunity to connect with any siblings and or other extended biological family, like you mentioned grandparents before? Like, have you been able to make that happen over time?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a sister and a brother,
Mhm.
which is just, I just love it. I can't explain it. I just love it. Always have. Uh, my sister was 5 when I met her, and my brother was 3 when I met him. So they basically don't really remember life without me in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was such a moving experience for me having them in my life from such a young age and being a part of their life. And that was something Vivienne respectfully did, which was amazing. That connection for us to become united was very strong on her behalf. And even, Viv's family, whole family behalf, even though there was all this distortion happening in the background. So that was lovely. And my sister and I are really close. We talk even still to this day, almost every day. Yeah, she has been an absolute rock in my life. And throughout this journey, she's been part of the adoption journey and understanding and what it means for her as well. She's been a big key part in my growth at the same time. And I think when she was younger, obviously she just knew me as Tash. Mum had a baby before me, and we kind of didn't. She never really talked about it, or like, well, who was your dad? Like there was nothing like that. But as she got older, that exploratory or quizzitive stage kicked in, which is fine. That's normal. My brother and I guess because he was so much younger and I'm so much older, plus he's a young lad. Like, what young lad wants to chill with their older sister? Very different paths. But he's just gorgeous, and he's on his own journey of life. I text him, we text occasionally. It's not like my sister and I, but he knows that I love him for who he is. And I guess too, he's still, sometimes they must be a little bit curious about it. They look at their mum going, I can't believe you had a child to someone else before us, so as they got older. But they're both beautiful. Yeah, they're just beautiful siblings, and I'm so very proud of both of them and where they've come in their life. And yeah, and how they've accepted me. Like, they've never really said, you're not my real sister, or you're not my sister, or anything like that. They've just, yeah, I've always been there.
And Tash, have you been able to connect with your biological father?
I did. I connected with him in the early in the early stages when I met Viv. Probably about a year, or not quite a year later, I was to meet him. That was interesting. I think because for so long, when Vivienne was pregnant, and I'm sure I can't remember if she shared the story with you, but she fell pregnant without having sex, right? So there was that element of, oh, that's not my baby. Yeah, that's not my child, you know. So when Viv met me, she knew anyway, but my face is very much like his. So when I did find out who my biological father was, that connection was made, and I met him. And then as soon as he looked at me, he just fell to the ground and cried, because I think the guilt kicked in for so long. And rightly so, as you know, as young 15, 6-year-old kids, and if you didn't have sex then, of course, just straight away you go, oh, that's not my kid. We didn't have sex, you know. So to his detriment, I understand that, but we haven't sort of kept in contact. I just don't feel I need to. We have occasionally over the years, hit and miss, when I've asked questions, especially when it's around, you know, medical reasons. Other than that, I don't feel the need that I need to be in contact with him. I've met him. I've got my family portrait picture, if that makes sense. I know where I've come from, but I don't need to destroy another family in my world, in my life. Yeah, I don't know too much about him. He also has children as well, but I'm not connected with them. I don't feel I need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, my attachment is to Viv. Yeah, and always has been.
So I guess I might ask, you've kind of touched on this already, but what has it meant to you to make all of these connections, and how has it shaped your sense of self and your sense of belonging?
Sense of self. It has given me the physical confirmation of where I came from.
Yeah.
That in itself has settled me a lot. Just knowing, to be able to look into the eyes of the person that created you gave me a sense of self. Even though they didn't raise me, or they have no, you know, don't have an impact in my life, as in, you know, my biological father, Vivienne has been a part of my life, you know, since I was 19. I'm now, you know, almost 45. So she has played a key part in my life, not so much from a mother perspective, but from a perspective of that she's my biological mother without being a mother. That's really hard to explain. She's just there for anything that I need, and encouragement, and talk things out with her. It gave me that sense of self. For a sense of belonging, I still feel I don't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I don't connect. I lost my dad in 2008, and growing up in that family, he was the rock, you know. I was dad's little girl. So I think once he died, it was very distorted after that, and I don't have the same connection with my mum. We're just very different. I just don't fit in the way that she thinks or what she needs in her life. But then I also don't feel I don't fit in Viv's world either, because I'm the child she couldn't raise at that time. And you don't, you know, so you're just here. You sort of sit in the middle. You don't sort of really feel a sense of belonging. Well, I don't feel a sense of belonging in a family. The family that I have is my husband. You know, that's all I have, really.
I so get that.
Yeah. And no one else understands that.
No. No,
Mm.
I really do.
Mm.
Whew.
Yeah, and you can try and explain it to people, and they just, you know, even if Mum was hell, but we love you, your family's here. You just don't feel it.
Yeah.
Mm. It's funny, after all these years, it still feels raw, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Doesn't take much to scratch off the surface, does it?
No. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence is, like with Viv, there's always that love and that care. And same with the other side, but you just sit in the middle.
Yeah. I always describe it as like an opaqueness, kind of like it's just neither side feels like a full connection. It's just,
They're just there.
yeah.
Yeah, you've got a reason to be on that side. You've got a reason to be on that side, but that actual the attachment,
Yeah.
the attachment theory is real. Yeah.
Understand that you came across Viv's episode on the podcast quite by accident. Can you tell us about how that happened and how it felt for you to hear her full story in that way for the first time?
Yeah, I was driving home. I was driving home from Brisbane. I often traveled down there for work, and I had come across Jigsaw. In the last 12 months, going on to 2 years. Part of my self-recovery and dealing with my mental health issues, I've started to look further into adoption. And so through my search, a lot of Jigsaw information has come up. So over the time, and I heard about the podcast, so I've just been listening, and so it just happened to be driving along, put Jigsaw on, and all of a sudden, Joe, you said, "Oh, I've got a special guest, Vivienne," and I had to sort of shake my head and go, "What?" Because I'm on the M1 coming home in peak hour. There's 110 kilometers an hour, traffic everywhere, and I was just like, "What?" And and then when I heard a voice, I was like, "Holy crap!" And I was sort of kept driving, and yeah, and then she started to talk about her story, and most of it I already knew because we've talked about this over the years. But I ended up having to pull over because I don't know if my body went into a bit of a shock or tunnel vision or however the mind works in those shock moments, but I remember I had to pull over. And I pulled over on the side of the M1 where I shouldn't have pulled over, but I had to. And, so I'm trying to listen to this podcast. I've got tears coming out my eyes because I'm thinking, holy crap, this is Vivienne. Got these cars that are zooming past you at 110. And all I can think about was, oh my God, I can't believe I'm listening to her on this podcast. Like, it was just all a bit a shock, but rightly so. I knew that of all the work that she had been doing, through, you gave me a voice, and I knew that she was quite involved in this space. I didn't really know how much involved. I guess I never really asked. I think because I personally wasn't ready, but I always thought what she was involved in was for other mothers, not our end of the scale, I guess. So, yeah, and I just sat there and I listened to it, and I think a lot of it I knew, but the resonating part for me was when she said, when I met her as an 18-year-old, and she looked at me and was like, where was that baby that I gave away? So I never really thought of it in that sense. She let me go the day she the day or day after I was born, and then all of a sudden an 18-year-old stands in front of her. That moment, I never really, as I said before, I didn't even have education on how I should approach the situation, let alone even thinking about how this would affect Vivienne on that side. Not once did I ever think, wow, yeah, what is it like to have had your child up for adoption and then to have them stand in front of you at 18 all those years, like, you're missing all those years and you're supposed to know this person. That was what really hit me the most about my reconnection with Vivienne, I guess, was there was a lot I never considered. When she often talks about, every time I make contact or every time she has these discussions, she's always bringing up this trauma that she had to suppress over the years. And the memories come through as she talks about it. And as time goes on, those memories are easier to deal with at that time, but the memories will never go away. I never even thought about it like that. I never thought about, well, what did she have to do to get on with life? As a child of adoption, I just thought, oh, she was someone that was on drugs or, just was poor. All these terrible things. She doesn't want me. She just gave me away. She couldn't have been bothered, not realizing that there's these real things that are going on, forced adoption or child victim of rape or whatever it may be. You just come up with all these scenarios in your head, but the main thing that just sticks out is, oh, they just don't want you, and then for her to talk about some things in her podcast, and then here she is as an 18-year-old. Where was my baby? All I want was my baby back. That was really tough to hear.
Wow. So you have been in the process of discovering that there are support services and communities available to people with lived experience of adoption now. What have you been learning, and how has that shaped you so far in that part of your experience?
It's been fantastic. I just wished I had this 30 years ago, It's like, seriously, it has opened my mind more so from Viv's perspective and other mothers' perspectives. Not that I ever saw myself as the victim in all of this. I just didn't understand it. I really didn't. I didn't understand a lot about forced adoptions. I really didn't even know it was a thing. I have learned to be more compassionate about the other side of the fence. That's the biggest thing for me, because I guess being a hot-headed young teenager and being around people that couldn't educate me in this space, you don't know what you don't know. So that for me has been an absolute eye-opener, and to also know that there are other people that think like me. I guess because I've always felt alone in that headspace. To come across people, even like yourself, Joe, like to come across people that can resonate and understand certain experiences, it's just so humbling, because my whole life I've just been battling this on my own.
Validating, isn't it? Just to know you're not alone, that you're not crazy, that
100%. And you can talk to counselors or you can talk to psychologists all you want, but for me personally, if they are not part of an adoptee themselves, or a mother, I can't have that discussion with them, because straight away you really don't get it, so I've just bottled it. So to read all this information, to see the statistics that come out around the mental health or the impact it has on people, it is validating. It's very refreshing, and it's definitely helped my mental health as part of my rediscovery. And I just, yeah, as I mentioned, I just wished it was around way back.
Tash, you're a mother yourself. If you're comfortable reflecting, how do you think your experience of adoption has shaped the way you approach relationships and parenting?
Mm. It's been a journey. When I gave birth to my daughter, I was really angry. Um, I was really angry at Viv. I remember the very first time when Chloe was put on my chest, and I had this baby. How can any mother just hand over their child to complete strangers and not know what happened to them? Like, I was so angry. And then I was so territorial of her. I just wanted to be I wanted her to look like me, and she didn't. So I was kind of like, oh my God, that again, that sense of connection for me, that visual connection was such a powerful thing for me. And she doesn't look like me at all.
Damn it.
But you're just like, yeah, no, but I was very territorial of her, and I tried my best, but I found it really hard to be a parent, really hard. Even still today, I have failed her. Mm. Like and I've never spoken to her about being adopted, or what that means, or those impacts, or my story. I've never spoken to her about that, because I think most of my life I've done so much for everybody else. I don't talk about it. I just don't talk about, well, this has happened to me. It's like, why would you need to know that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been hard as a mum. Like, I've really found it, and I've always said, to maternally connect with her. I've always tried. I was always there as a mum, and I feel like, I did a good job for what I knew. And I was a young mum myself. I was 19. And, my raising her was very unstable, her with her biological creator, that we call him. There's been a lot of trauma in our lives. And so I think I was more focused on making sure that she was okay around that space. I never really took the time to make sure that I was okay,
Yeah.
and which I wasn't, and which that has impacted on everybody.
Yeah.
So as a mother, I feel that I shouldn't have been a mother. Yeah. I found it really hard.
Yeah. I mean, you're not alone in that. There's so many of us that find that adoption has a big impact on us as parents and in our intimate relationships. And I hope you don't judge yourself too unfairly, Tash, because we do the best we can do with what we know when we know.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do.
I guess, like, I always wanted that mother-daughter relationship, where I saw it growing up as a kid. They were best friends, and they were connected, and they did everything together, and great relationships. And I never had that my my mum, that who adopted me. Not that we hated each other, we just weren't connected as well. And I just always wanted that best friend daughter, and I never got that. So again, where's that sense of belonging? If I don't belong there, I don't belong here. I don't belong there, I don't belong as a mom. So it just all, yeah.
Completely get that.
Mm.
Whoa. Is there anything that you've come to understand more deeply about yourself through all of your experience?
Yeah, I have self-reflected a lot. I have lived with a lot of self-trauma that I never dealt with or I never spoke to anyone about. So I think for those that are struggling, for me, I now found it very powerful to start facing it
Mhm.
and talking about it. And again, that's a trust thing. You want to make sure that you're talking to people that will really understand it and be able to guide you or to open you up to other people, not just going to talk because someone said, oh, you need to go and speak to a psychologist or something like that. Like you want to make sure it's validating for you and it is therapeutically going to help you. So for me, yeah, I think I didn't realize how much adoption has impacted my development of a person. Not to say that what Viv did was right or wrong or what, it's just the scenario that I'm in. I didn't realize how much being adopted does impact you later in life or throughout your whole life. Just the little things, like birthdays or, you know, schoolyard taunts or the height that you are or, that you don't belong. Everything all sort of starts to gel together and you don't connect all those dots until you actually start confronting them and putting them all together and getting the research and the help. Yeah. So it has shaped me now. As I mentioned before, I'm more empathetic to a lot of different things now, more I was just headstrong and I just ignored it. Not that I didn't believe it or I just didn't want to deal with it. My cup was full. Yeah. So now I'm more open, as in why I'm doing a lot more chats with Viv about different things and, just self-reflection on myself to go, wow, I can't believe I did that. How can I help others not to make that same mistake? Very much similar to yourself, Joe. But that comes with age and with people that help you or the doors that open.
Yeah.
I guess, but you've got to be able to walk through those doors. And that was the biggest thing for me. I had to have a full mental breakdown for me to realize that I can't keep living like this. And I have to face some of these hard conversations. Like having this conversation with you today is really hard. Yeah. But part of my personal growth is to do this sort of thing.
It's very courageous of you, and I really mean that. So thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story and with such honesty and with such heart. It's been a real privilege for me to hear your experience and particularly knowing both you and Viv, and you're both beautiful, beautiful souls. And I know that your words are going to resonate with many of our listeners very deeply.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure.
And to everyone tuning in, every adoption story is different and every journey matters. And if you're looking for support, resources, or simply a place to be heard, please know that Jigsaw Queensland's here for you. And if you'd like to support the podcast, leave a review, share this episode, or reach out because we love hearing from our listeners. And if you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, head to the Adopt Perspective page on the Jigsaw Queensland website and complete the prospective guest form that you'll find there. And thank you for listening. I'm Jo Sparrow. Take care and bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 21 0313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.